The laughter reached her before the words did. It sliced through the restaurant like broken glass, sharp, careless, cruel. Aisha froze mid-step, her fingers tightening around the thin strap of her purse as she stood just inside the doorway. For a moment, she told herself she was imagining it, that her mind was playing tricks on her because she hadn't slept, because heartbreak had a way of warping sound. But then she heard his voice. "Relax," Cameron said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "She was never my type anyway." The woman beside him, young, perfectly styled, draped in confidence like expensive perfume, laughed and leaned closer to him, her manicured hand resting possessively on his arm. The table they sat at was the one Aisha had helped choose months ago, back when this restaurant still felt like their place. Back when Cameron used to reach for her hand instead of mocking her existence. Aisha's breath caught. For 3 years, Cameron had been her future. Her fiancé. The man she defended when friends warned her about his temper, his pride, the way he always needed to feel superior. She had loved him through missed calls and sharp words, through promises postponed and apologies that never quite sounded sincere. She had told herself love was patience, that loyalty meant enduring. Now, standing in front of him with his mistress wrapped around his arm, Aisha realized how wrong she'd been. She tried to turn away quietly. She didn't want a scene. She didn't want pity. All she wanted was to disappear before he noticed her. She was almost at the door when Cameron saw her. "Aisha," he called, surprise flickering across his face before twisting into something uglier. Amusement.
Wow.
What a coincidence. Every head turned. The woman beside him looked Aisha up and down slowly, lips curling into a smirk. "This is her?" she asked Cameron, not bothering to lower her voice. "The one you were engaged to?" Cameron chuckled. Unfortunately, the word hit harder than a slap. Aisha felt the heat rush to her face, tears stinging her eyes as whispers rippled through the room. She could feel people watching, some curious, some uncomfortable, some already forming opinions about the woman being publicly discarded. She straightened her back, summoning what little dignity she had left. "I just came to pick up my things," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to keep it steady. "You said you'd leave them with the manager." Cameron leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Oh, right. Your things." He glanced at his mistress, then back at Aisha. "Funny how you still think anything here belongs to you." The woman laughed again, louder this time. "You should thank me," she said sweetly. "I saved you from a lifetime of disappointment." Aisha's vision blurred. She had imagined many endings to their relationship, quiet conversations, painful but private goodbyes, even angry arguments behind closed doors. She had never imagined this. Never imagined being reduced to entertainment for strangers over candlelit tables. Her hands shook as she turned toward the counter, hoping the manager might intervene. But no one moved. No one spoke. The world, it seemed, was content to let her drown. That's when she felt it. Not a touch, but a presence. Someone had shifted in the booth beside her. A man, early 30s maybe, with tired eyes and a calmness that didn't belong in a place filled with humiliation. A little girl sat next to him, no older than 5, clutching a stuffed rabbit and swinging her legs beneath the table. The man leaned slightly toward Aisha, his voice low, gentle, meant only for her. "Don't cry," he whispered. "He's not worth it." The words weren't dramatic. They weren't loud, but they wrapped around her like a shield. Aisha blinked, stunned. She looked at him, and for the first time since she'd walked into the restaurant, she felt seen, not as a joke, not as a discarded woman, but as a human being in pain. Her tears slipped free anyway, sliding down her cheeks despite her efforts. But now they felt different, less like defeat, more like release. Cameron scoffed when he noticed the exchange. "What's this?" he sneered. "Getting comfort from strangers now?" The single dad met Cameron's gaze, without flinching. There was no anger in his eyes. No need to raise his voice. Just quiet strength. And somehow, that terrified Cameron more than shouting ever could. The little girl tugged on the man's sleeve and whispered something into his ear. His lips curved into a soft smile as he nodded, then looked back at Aisha. Some people mistake cruelty for confidence, he said calmly, louder now, enough for others to hear. But it always reveals fear. The room fell silent. Aisha's heart pounded. She didn't know who this man was or why he cared, but in that moment, his words felt like a hand pulling her back from the edge. Cameron shifted uncomfortably, his smirk faltering. And for the first time since the laughter began, Aisha realized something powerful. She wasn't alone anymore. And this was only the beginning. The room didn't erupt the way Aisha expected. There was no applause, no gasps, no dramatic confrontation. Just a thick, heavy silence that settled over the restaurant like fog after the single dad's words landed. Forks paused midair. Glasses hovered near lips. Even the soft background music seemed to fade into something distant and awkward. Cameron laughed, too loudly, too quickly. "Wow," he said, shaking his head as if amused. "Everyone's a philosopher now." He glanced around, hoping to recruit the room back to his side. "You hear this nonsense?" No one responded. That was when the unease crept into his expression. It wasn't anger yet. It was confusion. The kind that comes when someone realizes their power is slipping, when the audience they thought they had suddenly refuses to play along. Aisha stood frozen near the counter, her chest tight, her tears still clinging to her lashes. She wanted to leave. She should leave. But her legs wouldn't move. It felt like if she walked away now, she'd carry this humiliation with her forever, folded neatly into her spine. The little girl in the booth slipped down from her seat, her shoes making a soft tap against the floor. She walked toward Aisha, without hesitation, holding her stuffed rabbit out like an offering. "For you," she said simply. Aisha gasped softly. Her hands trembled as she accepted the toy, its fur worn thin from love. The gesture cracked something open inside her chest. "Thank you," Aisha whispered, kneeling slightly to meet the child's eyes. The single dad watched quietly, pride and sadness mixing in his expression. He stood then, placing a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder, and turned fully toward Cameron. "You don't have to be cruel to feel important," he said, his voice calm but firm. "And you don't get to rewrite the past just because you're ashamed of it." Cameron scoffed again, but this time there was a hitch in his breath. Ashamed? Of her? He gestured at Aisha, like she was an inconvenience. "Please." I upgraded. A murmur rippled through the restaurant. Discomfort, disapproval, maybe even anger. The woman beside Cameron shifted in her chair, her smile stiffening as eyes turned in her direction too. Aisha felt something unexpected rise inside her. Not anger. Clarity. She stood straighter, clutching the stuffed rabbit to her chest. "You didn't upgrade," she said softly. Her voice didn't shake this time. "You replaced honesty with arrogance. And love with convenience." Cameron opened his mouth, then closed it. The insult he'd prepared didn't seem to fit anymore. The single dad nodded once, approving, then turned back to Aisha. "You don't owe anyone here an explanation," he said gently. "But you do owe yourself respect." The words settled deep. Aisha took a slow breath, feeling the weight of years lift just slightly from her shoulders. For the first time, she wasn't trying to defend herself. She wasn't trying to win him back or prove her worth. She was letting go. Cameron's mistress crossed her arms, her confidence cracking. "We don't need this," she muttered, leaning toward Cameron. "Let's just go." But Cameron stayed seated, jaw tight. His pride wouldn't let him retreat, not yet. "You think you're better than me?" he snapped at the single dad. "Playing hero in front of everyone?" The man smiled faintly, shaking his head. "No," he said. "I just don't enjoy watching someone be humiliated for sport. My daughter's watching. That matters more than your ego." The little girl looked up at Cameron, her eyes wide and curious. "Why are you being mean?" she asked innocently. The question landed harder than any insult. Cameron's face flushed. He glanced around, realizing every eye in the room was now on him, not with amusement, but judgment. Aisha felt a strange calm wash over her. The shame she'd walked in with no longer belonged to her. It had shifted. Found a new owner. She turned toward the manager, who finally stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said gently to Aisha. "Your belongings are ready. Please come with me." Aisha nodded, then hesitated. She looked back at the single dad. "I don't even know your name," she said quietly. "Adam," he replied. "And this is Lily." Lily beamed. "Thank you," Aisha said, meaning more than words could hold. Adam inclined his head. "Be kind to yourself," he said. "The hardest part is over." As Aisha followed the manager away, Cameron called out one last time, his voice sharp with desperation. "Don't act like you won," he said. "You'll regret this." Aisha stopped. She turned slowly, meeting his eyes with a calm he'd never seen before. "I already won," she said softly. "The moment I stopped begging you to be better." She walked away, without looking back. Behind her, the silence returned. But this time, it felt different. It felt like justice waiting to unfold. Aisha didn't realize she was shaking until the cool night air hit her face. The restaurant door closed behind her with a soft click, muting the murmurs inside. Neon lights reflected off the wet pavement, blurring into streaks of color as her vision swam. She hugged her purse to her side, the weight of her belongings suddenly feeling heavier than they should have. She had survived the moment she feared most. And yet, her heart still raced like she was running from something unseen. "Hey, wait." The voice was calm, careful not to startle her. Aisha turned. Adam stood a few steps away, Lily's small hand tucked into his. He hadn't followed her immediately, had given her space, respect. That alone told her more about him than 100 grand gestures ever could. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay," he said. "We can walk you to your car, if you'd like." For a split second, instinct told her to refuse. She had spent too long learning how to be strong alone. But then she looked at Lily, at the stuffed rabbit now peeking from Aisha's purse, and something softened. "I'd like that," Aisha said quietly. They walked together in comfortable silence. The city hummed around them, passing cars, distant laughter, the normal rhythm of life continuing as if nothing monumental had just happened. And maybe for the world, nothing had. But for Aisha, everything had changed. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Aisha said after a moment, glancing at Lily. Lily shook her head seriously. "It's okay," she said. "Daddy says when people are mean, it's because they're hurting inside." Adam smiled down at her. "And sometimes," he added gently, "they just don't know how to love without control." The word struck Aisha, like truth she'd always known but never named. They reached her car. Aisha fumbled for her keys, her hands still unsteady. Adam waited without rushing her. "Can I ask you something?" Aisha said finally. "Of course." "Why did you speak up?" Her voice wavered. "You didn't know me." It would have been easier to stay quiet. Adam leaned against a nearby lamppost, considering. "Because I've been you," he said simply. Not the same story, but the same feeling, being made small so someone else could feel big. Aisha looked at him, surprised. "My wife passed away 3 years ago," he continued, his tone steady but weighted. "Before that, there were moments where words were used like weapons. I promised myself Lily would never grow up thinking cruelty was normal." Aisha swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." He nodded once. "Thank you." For a moment, they just stood there, two strangers connected by shared wounds and an unexpected moment of grace. Inside the restaurant, laughter suddenly burst out, forced, brittle. Cameron trying too hard to reclaim his audience. Aisha flinched. Adam noticed. "You don't have to be brave anymore," he said gently. "You already were." Something in her chest loosened. She took a steady breath. "I thought if I loved him enough, he'd change," she admitted. "I kept thinking if I was quieter, more patient, less demanding." Adam shook his head slowly. "Love isn't about shrinking," he said. "The right person won't ask you to disappear." The words felt like permission. Aisha nodded, tears gathering again. But this time, they weren't heavy. They were cleansing. Lily squeezed her hand. "You're pretty," she said earnestly. "And nice." He was silly. Aisha laughed softly, the sound surprising her. "Thank you, Lily." They shared a small smile, and in that simple exchange, something warm and unfamiliar sparked. Hope. Adam straightened. "You're safe now," he said. "But if you ever feel like you need someone to talk to, even just once, you don't have to carry this alone." Aisha hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "I'd like that," she said. "If that's okay." Adam nodded. "Of course." They exchanged numbers. Nothing rushed, nothing heavy. Just an open door. As Adam and Lily turned to leave, Aisha felt a strange ache, not loss, but possibility. "Adam," she called. He turned. "Thank you," she said. "Not just for tonight. For reminding me who I am." He smiled softly. "You did that yourself. I just reminded you to look." They walked away hand in hand, disappearing into the glow of streetlights. Aisha got into her car and sat there for a long moment before starting the engine. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes red, but brighter, stronger. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something she had to earn. It felt like something waiting for her. And somewhere behind her, in a restaurant full of fading laughter, Cameron was beginning to understand what it meant to lose something he could never replace. 3 days later, Cameron's name lit up Aisha's phone. She stared at the screen as if it might bite her. For a moment, her heart betrayed her, jumping, hoping, remembering. Old habits didn't die quietly. They lingered, whispering maybe he's sorry, maybe this time is different. She didn't answer. The phone stopped ringing. Then a message appeared. "We need to talk. You embarrassed me." A bitter smile tugged at her lips. She set the phone down and exhaled slowly, grounding herself in the present. Sunlight streamed through her apartment window, illuminating half-packed boxes she'd finally started organizing, pieces of a life she was actively reclaiming. The engagement photos were gone. The dress was folded away, no longer a promise, just fabric. Her phone buzzed again. "You let a stranger disrespect me in public." That was when clarity fully settled in. She typed back, her fingers steady. "You did that yourself." She didn't wait for his reply. Instead, she grabbed her keys and headed out. Adam had invited her and Lily to the park. Nothing formal, nothing heavy. Just fresh air, coffee, and a chance to breathe without judgment. The park was alive with movement. Children laughing, dogs chasing tennis balls, couples strolling hand in hand. Lily spotted Aisha immediately and ran toward her, arms wide. "You came," Lily squealed, hugging her legs. "I promised," Aisha laughed, crouching down. Adam smiled, handing her a warm cup of coffee. "No pressure day," he said. "You can leave whenever you want." "I don't want to," Aisha replied honestly. They sat on a bench beneath a wide oak tree. Lily played nearby, narrating an elaborate adventure involving pirates and princesses. Aisha found herself smiling more than she had in months. "You seem lighter," Adam said after a while. "I am," Aisha admitted. "For the first time, I'm not waiting for someone else's approval." Adam nodded. "That's freedom." Her phone buzzed again. "Cameron." She hesitated, then silenced it. Adam noticed, but didn't pry. "The past has a loud voice," he said gently. "But it gets quieter the less you listen." Aisha swallowed. "He thinks he owns the last word." Adam met her gaze. "He doesn't." As if summoned by her resolve, her phone buzzed again, this time with a longer message. "You threw away 3 years over one bad night. I can forgive you if you apologize." Aisha read it once, then twice, and something inside her finally snapped. Not in anger, but in finality. She typed slowly, deliberately. "You didn't lose me that night. You lost me every time you chose cruelty over kindness. This is goodbye." She blocked his number. Her chest tightened, then loosened, like a knot being undone. Adam watched her quietly. "That wasn't easy," he said. "No," Aisha agreed. "But it was necessary." Lily ran back, breathless. "Daddy." "Aisha." "I found a ladybug." They leaned in together, admiring the tiny creature before it fluttered away. "Some things aren't meant to be held," Adam said softly. Just witnessed. Aisha smiled at the thought. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Adam walked her to her car again. The ritual felt different now, less like rescue, more like companionship. You don't owe me anything, Adam said as she opened her door. Just keep choosing yourself.
She paused.
Would it be okay if I invited you both to dinner sometime? She asked, nervous despite herself. My treat. Adam's eyes softened. I'd like that. Lily clapped.
Yay.
Dinner date. Aisha laughed. Not a date, she said quickly, then stopped herself. Maybe it didn't need a label. That evening, as Aisha sat alone in her apartment, she realized something profound. Cameron no longer had access to her heart or her peace. And in the quiet that followed, something new had space to grow. Not revenge, not validation, but healing. The night Aisha slept through without dreaming of Cameron felt unreal. No sudden jolts awake. No replayed arguments. No phantom guilt curling in her chest. Just silence, soft, uninterrupted, healing. When morning light spilled across her bed, she lay there for a long moment, breathing, realizing something extraordinary. She was free. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Not his name. Adam's. Lily insists on pancakes today. You're invited, no pressure. Aisha smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. I'll be there, she typed back before doubt could intervene. The cafe Adam chose was small and sunlit, the kind of place where the staff remembered regulars and kids were given extra whipped cream. Lily waved from a booth the moment she spotted Aisha. Aisha, she called, beaming. Pancakes arrived stacked high, laughter spilling easily across the table. No tension. No walking on eggshells. Just presence. Aisha hadn't realized how starved she was for that kind of normal kindness. You look happy, Adam said gently. I feel safe, Aisha replied after a moment. I forgot how rare that is. Adam nodded. Safety is underrated. As if summoned by irony, Aisha's phone buzzed. An unknown number. Her stomach clenched, but she didn't panic. She opened the message. I heard you're already replacing me. Figures. Aisha stared at the words, then did something that surprised even herself. She laughed. Not the brittle laugh of before, but a real one, light and free. Adam noticed. Everything okay? Yes, she said, and meant it. More than okay. She deleted the message without responding. Across town, Cameron sat alone in his apartment, scrolling through old photos, realizing too late that control had never been love. The woman he'd tried to impress had already grown bored of his bitterness. The laughter he'd relied on had turned hollow. For the first time, he felt small. Back at the cafe, Lily reached across the table and held Aisha's hand. You're part of our team now, she declared. Aisha's throat tightened. I'd like that. Weeks passed. Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in moments. In dinners that ended with honest smiles. In conversations that didn't leave bruises. In the way Adam listened without trying to fix her, and how she learned to trust her voice again. One evening, as they walked along the same street where everything had changed, Aisha paused. This is where you whispered to me, she said. Adam smiled. You remember. I remember everything, she replied. But it doesn't hurt anymore. He looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time, allowed himself to hope. I don't want to rush you, Adam said softly. But I want you to know whatever this becomes, it gets to be kind. Aisha felt tears rise, not from pain, but recognition. That's all I ever wanted, she said. In a final, poetic twist, they passed the restaurant. Inside, Cameron sat alone, staring at a half-empty glass. No audience. No applause. Just the echo of choices made too late. He saw Aisha through the window. She didn't see him. Her laughter carried down the sidewalk, bright and unburdened, as Lily skipped ahead and Adam walked beside her. Not in front, not behind, but with her. And in that simple alignment, Aisha found her ending. Not the one she'd planned, but the one she deserved.